Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Conscious Grief series. Today, I am joined by Laura Uglow, who is first and foremost a mother, a wife, but she's also a breathwork facilitator, a meditation coach, and an intuitive healer and guide. So, welcome to the Conscious Grief series, Laura.
Hi, Tara. Thank you for having me. It's really special to be here.
Well, I'm really delighted to have met you. This is actually the first time we've properly
I know.
spoken. We've followed each other on Instagram for a while. So it's lovely to actually really get to know you and more,
Definitely.
yeah, your story and your brother, because a lot of the time sibling loss can be one of the, as they say, the forgotten category of mourners. And I remembered reading on your Instagram page that your brother had died. And so, as it turns out, I didn't know like a huge amount about the background of your story and how that's been a very big part of why you do what you do now. So, perhaps you could just begin by telling us about your brother Dan and what happened and how you are doing the work you're doing now.
Okay, so my brother Daniel, he was younger than me. So he died in 2014 and the 28th of November. And yes, about 8.5 years ago, we had quite a special bond, really close growing up. And yeah, he died suddenly. It was a sudden cardiac death with a condition that we didn't know that he had. So the shock, first and foremost, was huge. Yeah, and I just still remember so vividly the day that my parents had a really lovely family day out. I had my daughter, she was 3 at the time. She's now 11. And my parents phoned my husband, and I could just tell upstairs he was bathing her. And I guess in that moment, that's where my life changed. And I think often with grief, there's before grieving and after grieving. And in that moment, my life kind of, as I knew it, kind of fell away in so many ways. But yeah, me and my brother were very close growing up. And I think this is the thing with siblings, you share so many memories and you share this history, this kind of path of the things you only share with a child, the laughter, the silly games, the making jokes, your parents, and yeah, just all of the wonderful holidays. It's the holidays that really stand out for me. They were just such happy times. We'd feel so free and laughed. We had a lovely childhood. We were very blessed and very close as a result. He was quite funny, in fact, very funny. He was the joker. And yeah, we had quite a special bond. And to find out that day that he was gone in an instant, it absolutely just changed everything. Yeah, I think from that day, this is the piece that's very rarely spoken about. I kind of went into shock. I heard my husband on the phone. I can't remember even if I spoke to my mum and dad. All I remember is that I had to go outside and it was freezing, it was winter, and just take some deep breaths and just try and catch my breath again. It literally just took my breath away. And so that was in that moment. And I just remember all that night just lying and just staring and not being able to even comprehend the enormity of that he wasn't there anymore, that we were a very, very close family. My mum and my dad and my brother. And there was just so many happy times. And he actually lived in Edinburgh when he died. And my parents were already up there. There's a bit of a story behind that, but I went up to meet them the next day. I flew there, and I just remember on the plane just crying all the way, but I was just really desperately trying to write down all of the happy memories. It was like he'd gone, but I needed to cling on to what was there. So I've got this notebook of just all of these things, these memories and things that I just didn't want to lose. With him gone, I guess I was scared that I would lose that connection with him, that connection with my past. And you never expect your sibling to die, because they're the ones who are supposed to be there through life, through your marriage, your children, your as you grow up. They're supposed to be there for each stage of our life. So it was just the biggest shock to begin. And I guess the first bit was just pure shock, and just remember really writing all of those memories down, which actually is a really nice thing to have and look back on now. So there was, a lot of tears, and not, just the usual things with shock, not being able to eat, or just understand what that meant. So I flew up to see my mum and dad, and I just remember seeing them. We were obviously in tears, crying, but there was quite a lot of things up there to kind of sort out. And just the weeks after that, we had his funeral about a month later, because he had to come back from, and because it was a sudden death, there had to be an autopsy, which we didn't find out in the autopsy, but we later found out through having heart checks through our family that it was actually a hereditary heart condition that he'd sadly picked up from my mum. I didn't have it. Luckily, my dad obviously doesn't. But yeah, we found out. We went up to London, and we had some checks just to kind of find out, which was helped us get a little bit of peace around what happened. But I just remember in the months and weeks afterwards, like the first sort of 4 to 6 weeks, I spent a lot of that time crying. But it's almost like it's okay to be sad in that time. It's just happened, and it's okay. It feels that it's okay to do. Society kind of expects that, but it also was quite lonely, because no one really knew what to say to me. And I think, as we've said before, that sibling grief is often forgotten, and I did feel that, and my dad does often say that as well, that everyone was wonderful and kind of really taking care of them and bringing them food, and I actually felt really quite lost and alone. And I didn't know many people who had the same experience, or and I have a wonderful group of friends, and I have a wonderful family, wonderful husband, and got 3 children now, but at that time I just had my daughter. But so loving and open, but yet it was a very lonely experience for me. So yes, I think just that lack of having people to share that with was really quite difficult.
Thank you, first of all, so much for sharing about Daniel and what happened, and the terrible shock. And I remember you had mentioned that that there was a point where you thought, well, friends kind of stopped asking about how
Mm.
you were, and so there was sort of a bit of that sort of stay calm and carry on kind of mentality for yourself,
Yes.
and you sort of moved as well. You moved house, is that right?
Yeah, we did. So this was all going on at the same time as Daniel had died. So my husband was kind of busy trying to organize the move. Me and my parents got quite close, but it got to a stage about 4 to 6 weeks in, sort of a week or two after his funeral. And it was a case of life carries on, and I can either just, carry on with life, and so really what I did from that point is I put on my mask and I pushed my feelings down, and I pretended that, you know, I was okay to carry on. But in truth, I was completely broken inside. I didn't know where to go or how to get help at that point. And I think that can exacerbate feelings of loneliness as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so many people who will be listening to this will really relate to what you're saying, that putting the mask on, and once the funerals happened, everybody else's lives, continue as normal. And yet there you are, people stop asking how you are, plus the fact that you don't know anyone else that's experienced a loss of a sibling at that time. And it's a very isolating place to be in.
Mm.
Mm.
Very isolating place to be in. And especially when I think you've got children as well, and you want to be okay for them, and you want to kind of, move to a new area and no one knows your past. And it just doesn't, even though the past was so fresh, it just doesn't come into the conversation.
So
And then
then,
the times when it did was by accident, and people are then shocked and don't know really what to say to you. So,
yeah, do you have any specific memories of those uncomfortable sort of moments?
yeah, there was one, but there was a couple particularly. So there was one where my daughter had started the school. It was almost a year after Dan died, and they watched a movie. And I think I can't remember which one. It was a Disney. It may have been Frozen. So there was a death. And then my daughter got very upset and ended up sitting on one of the mum's laps and told her about my brother. And then obviously at the end, she came out. She was very loving and very considerate, but also didn't know what to say. And then there was another experience where I was wearing a locket which had a photo of my brother inside. And I went, to a dinner party. We'd only known them a couple of months. And, she said, "Oh, I love your locket. Is there a photo of your children inside?" I said, "Actually, no, there's a photo of my brother who passed away a year ago." And of course, then the room goes completely silent. But it's hard because when that happens, it actually feels that you want to push it down more because you don't want to make other people feel uncomfortable, because you can feel the discomfort, can't you? It's like, yeah, it's the unspoken thing.
Yeah, it is. And then we sort of end up, like you say, sort of thinking, "Oh, I'm not going to mention that because it's going to
Mm.
be difficult for other people around me." And actually, a lot of the time, what we want is an invitation to talk about our loved ones who are no longer with us. Um, and I know that then you took a trip on a yoga retreat, which ended up being quite transformational. So, how
Yeah.
long Daniel died was that trip?
There was a really difficult couple of, so I'd say the phase where I kind of pushed my feelings down and put on my mask, really, I'd say spanned probably 2 years. In fact, I almost remember exactly to the day, 2 years in, where I felt things had to change. And because I'd been, and this is the other thing, is that because I'd been pushing my feelings down, it was manifesting in other ways. So I had huge health anxiety, like even just the smallest little thing my daughter had could send me into a spiral of worry and upset about what was wrong, which, I now know was linked to kind of my unresolved grief and trauma. So yeah, I remember I got to about that stage, about 2 years in. I was feeling anxious and quite exhausted from that period of time. And a friend suggested to me that I go to a local Kundalini class with her, which I absolutely loved. And I got in the room and it was like such a relief. I felt I'd found a little community and a space where I just felt safe to kind of open up a little bit. And then after about a month of being there, I found out some of them had arranged to go on a yoga retreat in Ibiza. And I didn't hesitate. I just knew that I knew in that moment that I had to go and be there. So I said yes. And that was, I think, about 5 years ago now. And it just changed the path for me. It really opened up my heart, and it really began to shift some of my grief, because I felt that when we were in a really intimate small group where we'd all experienced different things and upsetting things and difficult things, but to be in a room on that retreat where the women who I still know and love dearly were sharing so openly. We were crying together, we were sharing. It was just a really, really beautiful experience, that kind of by itself. And as part of that retreat, we were doing lots of Kundalini yoga, we were eating healthy food. And yeah, it was really lovely to be with such like-minded souls. But a part of that retreat, we had the option to choose different modalities, like healing experiences, like energy healing, psychic readings, and then the other one was breath work. And I really felt drawn to the breath work. There was a wonderful lady there, and we did like an intimate small group. So there was 3 of us that chose to do this breathwork class. And I think because it was small, it felt like a really safe space to like release some of my grief and how I was feeling. And within that class, so I mean, breathwork, for those people who haven't heard of it before, is an ancient kind of breath technique, which is an energy healing technique, but it's also used to release emotional feelings and trauma. I didn't know loads about it then, but I felt really drawn to it. And I think when we started to breathe, I didn't really know what to expect, but I just had the most profound experience, which was very healing. I released within that session, I think, just that really raw grief, that kind of belly-wrenching tears that were there and needed to be felt and needed to be seen and heard. And I think, like, it makes me feel emotional now thinking, just I'd pushed that down for so long, and just to feel it was truly beautiful. But it really opened the doorway to my spirituality as well. And I really felt the connection with my brother within that class as well, which was a huge comfort for me. And yeah, that practice just really sort of opened my mind that, you know, when we feel our pain and when we allow it to be a part of us and we don't shame ourselves and we don't push it down and it moves through us, it just becomes natural. It becomes a part of us. And it doesn't become so scary or such a big thing. And I think sometimes in the first class, it can be quite a raw, open experience. I often work one-to-one with people when that's happening. And it doesn't always happen that way either. That's the way it happened for me. And that's intuitively, obviously, what I needed. But I instantly felt so much lighter. I could feel the benefits almost instantaneously. So yeah, I really felt drawn to kind of explore that practice as well as my spirituality kind of on a much deeper level. I'd always kind of felt drawn to those things. Like there'd always been a real part of me which was quite spiritually connected. And I think in the months after Dan died, I had, you know, quite vivid dreams, and I could definitely feel his presence. But I think the breathwork practice just gave me that deeper connection to my feelings so I could understand how I felt. It made me less fearful of how I was feeling. Yeah, and I felt more open to being in tune with my feelings from that practice. Obviously, one session wasn't an instantaneous you know, and I still work with the practice now. You know, grief is something that obviously lives with us. But yes, it was a, you know, very wonderful, amazing, and quite life-changing week we had away.
Sounds like it. So that week then opened you up to thinking, I'd like to support other people with these modalities. So perhaps you could just explain about the work that you do now. And I know that previously you were always in the wellness space, but you were a personal trainer and nutritionist,
Yeah.
doing more breath work and energetic healing. So perhaps you could just explain to the listeners more about that.
Yeah, so I've been in the health and wellness industry for about 20 years. And I think my experience with grief has just really, you know, opened me up to the importance of healing our inner world, and just the power of healing and self-love to bring more compassion and empathy and understanding and kindness to the good things that happen, but also more importantly, the difficult challenges that we face, because there is so much within these practices that helps us to love and accept all parts of ourselves, to kind of bring more of what we need to support ourselves through this time. So, you know, it can be really easy when you're pushing your feelings down to just keep going, to rush, to push through, and end up burnt out and completely exhausted. But actually what we need when we're grieving is we need tenderness, we need compassion, we need nourishment, we need love. And what I learned is that starts with me sharing that with myself. And when I started to do that, I realized that I could bring more of that energy into my external world. I was able to bring myself back for my daughter, for my husband. I now also have 5-year-old twins. But so that's kind of the energy that I'm working with my clients. I kind of retrained completely after that retreat. So I did my angelic Reiki qualification first, and that really connected me on a quite spiritual level. So I do lots of energy healings. Then also kind of played around with different breathwork practices, and then settled with this beautiful practice, that I trained in with a guy in America. And I've also trained in meditation and various other energy healing. So I use that blend of work on a one-to-one level. I do some groups online and in person, but just to really take my clients through that healing process. And I use the breath work and work with my clients with the breath work to help them really connect more deeply with themselves, to connect with how they're feeling, but also to help them feel really safe in their body so that they can feel safe to have a release, because we do need to feel safe in ourselves, and we do need to feel loved and heard to be able to feel what is difficult. Using the breath work, and then I use the kind of energy healing as well, just to bring more balance to their chakras in their body, and then just meditation as well, just for deep healing and relaxation. But the breath work I found is particularly powerful for grief. So often one-to-one, I will take my clients through that journey. And sometimes the first few sessions can be safety and trust and just kind of really connecting with themselves and their hearts. And sometimes there can be a connection with the grief straight away. So it really depends on the experience and the individual as well. But it really helps to bring kind of, when we release the emotions, we can heal the energy within our body as well. We can access the love within ourselves. We can feel more peaceful, and our energy and vitality moves more freely. I can just remember at one point after my brother died, just feeling like I would never get peace of mind ever again. And then I remember about a year ago just sitting, I was on a family holiday, but I always go off and do like a morning breath work or meditation nice and early before they get up. And I was just sitting overlooking the sea, and I was just thinking, wow, I feel so different, to be able to be looking out to experience that peace, but also to know that if my emotions do come up and I'm grieving, I've got the tools that I need to kind of really take myself through those emotions. And that's how I work with my clients as well, is teaching them how to connect with themselves, but also giving them the tools they need to connect and take care of themselves and love themselves through the process of grief. And it doesn't matter whether the grief was a year ago or 15 years ago or 25 years ago. It's kind of a similar process.
Yeah, I think you raise a really excellent points, especially for people to feel safe enough to have a release. And because grief can be very isolating, and maybe we've been sort of left alone to deal with it, then we don't have, and sometimes we don't want to process it with the people who are closest to us, even if we do have a very loving family. And that's why finding facilitators such as yourself, where you can feel that safety and ability to allow yourself to feel all the feelings is really powerful. And this piece around self-love, sometimes we hear that word, those phrases about self-love, nowadays very frequently, but sometimes it takes something massive to happen to really think, okay, now I've really got to learn how to be kind to myself.
Yeah. So that's a really important point, because I think, as you said, I've been in this industry for a long time. So I thought I was really good with self-care, and I did practice meditation, and I ate well, and I did all the right things, and I took my supplements, and grief happened, and it just all fell away. It's almost like none of those things made enough of a difference anymore. I kind of really had to learn to kind of exchange a much more loving energy with myself, because grief can be tiring alongside everything else. And it's, whether you're pushing your feelings down or healing and feeling them, we need to rest when we're healing. We need to enjoy moments of stillness. We need to be able to love ourselves enough to say, no, actually, that doesn't work for me today. I need to do this because it nourishes me more. So it's just really learning to have those boundaries with grief, so that we're not rushing around and kind of exhausting ourselves more, but we're really tuning into our own inner wisdom and what we need to feel good. And that, to me, is true self-love, is showing ourselves compassion through the light and the darkness. It's showing ourselves kindness in the same way that we show kindness to others. But as I said, self-love can be loving yourself enough to say, no, I don't have to keep up with everyone else at the moment. I can choose a different way for me right now. And that's ultimately what I did through the process. Is things needed to change, and to be there for my family and myself in the way I needed to in that time, there had to be some give and take and some compromises, and strength to have boundaries and to really take care of myself. That's kind of what I really learned about self-love. Is, self-love can help us heal our inner world as well. And it looks different for everyone. So self-love, there's no one formula that works for one person or another. And that's, I think, why I work really intuitively through this process with my clients, because we all need different things. Our experiences of being really different. And so just the healing journey then looks quite different. So just really tuning into our own needs. And I think that's one of the things that this practice has done for me. And so many of my clients, is they get to know themselves better. When you get to know yourselves better, you can understand what you need, how you feel, and just really connecting with those deeper parts of yourself, and knowing that it's okay that your needs are equal to your families and your loved ones. And that's something that I work with a lot with all of my clients.
Yeah, I think what you're saying about everybody's healing journey is going to be different, because everybody's unique. And that's just such a great reminder for people who are listening, and that you also have that quite bespoke, if you like, way of working with people, because it's going to be different for everybody. And I always like to ask people in these, and you've sort of, I feel like you're sort of answering it as we go, but like, if you had to interpret the term conscious grief, what would you say conscious grief looks like?
I think conscious grief is really bringing our grief into our awareness. It's allowing our grief, but also the person or the people we've lost, to be a part of us. It's allowing kind of our feelings to be there. So it's consciously grieving, and it's just giving ourselves permission to feel our sadness, to feel the love, because when we feel our sadness and we feel our grief, we can also feel more connected to who we've lost and the love that we felt with them. And by bringing our grief into our sort of conscious awareness, It does do, it becomes a part of us. It's a lifelong journey. It's not, there's not a beginning and a start. You know, for me now, I work through my grief consciously through these practices. I might play some songs which connect me on a deeper level to my brother and how I feel. And I may do a breath work to really connect if I'm feeling a little bit sad that day, or the grief I felt for him and the love I feel for him might connect me to life as well on a deeper level. Is, you know, that when I wasn't grieving consciously, I felt anxious and I felt tired and just overwhelmed with life. And in grieving consciously, it's allowed me to bring those gifts and things I've learned through the process to really appreciate life, to really appreciate what I have, you know, and for me to sit here and say it's a gift. It doesn't mean that each day is easy, absolutely, but to go from having no peace of mind when he died to now being able to experience moments of joy again, and to be able to feel all of my emotions again, that's what conscious, it's quite a long answer, sorry, but it's like that's conscious grief has really helped me to appreciate my life, what's important, but also really what I want, to appreciate the simple pleasures, the you know, I know that my brother, I know how much he loved me and still loves me, and how I feel his energy, and I know that he didn't want me to stay stuck in that place. And you know, by grieving consciously, I've sort of been able to move through some of those feelings and still can, and to live my life feeling more connected to all of the feelings, not just the grief.
I think that's a wonderful answer, Laura. Thank you for that.
Pleasure.
And I know that you have a free gift for the listeners, so perhaps you could just let us know what that is.
So I've offering like a free consultation and chat with me. So my email address is below if anyone wants to get in touch, and then there'll be a discounted one-to-one breathwork healing session with me as well. So yeah, I'd always start with the consultation, and then people can connect with me that way. But yeah.
Well, I really recommend people to sign up for that. I too have found breathwork really powerful and a great way to release and, as you say, sort of get unstuck with the grief and start to really grieve consciously. So yes, Laura, thank you so much. It's really wonderful to hear your story and how it really does pertain to this conscious, you know, the theme of conscious grief. It encapsulates that. So I love what you were sharing, how in a sense, you know, when you were grieving consciously, it made you feel much more alive as well.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for holding this space for me and just all of us to share our experiences and our stories. It's quite a special experience for all of us to hear other people's experiences and to share our own. So thank you so much.
You're so welcome. I think that, you know, I always often refer to a therapist I had who'd say to me, you know, we're all teachers for one another. And I really believe that. And that's why I really love hosting these events and connecting with people like yourself and sharing stories. Yeah.
Well, I know I've been really inspired by yours in the lead up to this as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you everyone who's been listening.
Thank you, everyone.